Good morning, everyone. Back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Thomas Schwartz is with us this morning, political science professor over at Vanderbilt. It's good to have you on, as always.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You see the subject of conversation, national security, in light of what's happened in the last week or so in New Jersey, Minnesota, New York City, and what's happening with these bombings. We can take some of your calls, 737-7587. Does it concern you? Where do you think we're going with all of this? And what does it mean? Is there a spike? As you say, it goes kind of in cycles sometimes, right, especially the use of bombs. But of late, I mean, there's almost concern that there's a terrorist cell of some type operating or targeting all of a sudden in a short window the Northeast.
Well, yeah, no, well, at least the possibility that he represents a cell that targeted the Northeast.
You know they're on alert because you worry there may be more coming. So let's take a call from Joe. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Joe, what's on your mind?
Just listening to you. Always here. The thing that I don't understand, I went back even to the Boston bombers and this guy here. People are running back and forth to these countries where they're from, and it seems we don't ever learn anything about that because that's how they get radicalized. Most of them, not exactly here in the United States, but when they go back and their wives are going back, and I mean, you know, who's watching these people? It's well known that this family, well, this guy here, this last bomber was Trump, they was having trouble with his family, had been for years, about them complaining about because they was Muslims, that they were being discriminated against or whatever. So, I mean, you know, these guys got passports evidently, but is anybody looking to see, you know, when somebody gets on the list of a person to watch, if they're running back and forth to Afghanistan, Pakistan, or even in the Boston bomber case, they was going back and forth to Russia. Even the Russians told them.
Yeah.
And it way before the bombings that, you know, you watch these guys are radical, so you better keep an eye on them. Did we do that? No.
Now, this guy wasn't on any real list. You are right, Joe, that he did have problems with Elizabeth, the town there, and his father, I guess, owned a restaurant, First American Fried Chicken, and there had been some lawsuits filed because they were not abiding by certain ordinances. They claimed it may have been, you know, they were targeted because they were Muslim. But yeah, Professor, I hear what Joe's saying, and others may say the same thing. But as Americans, Joe, if he wants and has a passport, can go wherever the heck he wants.
Right.
And so can I, as long as we do so legally, right? I mean, you know, if someone just makes repeated trips to Afghanistan, is that a red flag unto itself?
It is, and in fact, he supposedly was pulled aside for secondary screening the last time he came back. So it is a red flag to go to places that have strong terrorist activity. Clearly, it didn't work in the sense that for whatever reason they didn't continue the monitoring or
That's
that.
hard
but
to do. How do you do that?
It is very difficult.
I mean, think about it, there's so many millions of them. And now I agree. I mean, if you're an American, you want to go to Afghanistan on vacation, you need your head examined. Okay, so you're either going there, you know, for what this guy was going there for. Maybe you have some family there.
Well,
it's possible you have some business there, but that should be easy enough to figure out. But yeah, I understand that. But I also don't like the idea of all of a sudden our government telling us as Americans who are law-abiding where we can and cannot travel. Right. But okay, but that should have been. But
that, you know, the thing is, we have communities from both Afghanistan and Pakistan who have immigrated here, go back to see family. There are legitimate reasons to go, and then there are people who have to be, or which there should be surveillance. And there has been. This is one of those cases in which I'm sure there's going to be a great deal of investigation as to why he fell through the cracks. Yeah. But there's no perfect system, and that certainly does reflect that.
You think with surveillance, had they followed him and watched, that this could have been prevented?
Who knows?
I mean, how much? I mean, literally, when you have so many folks like him that probably just travel but really have not done anything bad yet, what are you going to have? You know, security crews in a building across the street from his apartment with cameras and surveillance. I mean, come on, the resources, the time, and it's just not there to do for everyone that has a red flag.
No, and,
what do you do?
We face the dilemma of being an open society and a society that respects the civil liberties of its citizens, and yet at the same time has to deal with the question of terrorism. And that is, it's not there's no perfect system. You can't, you will always have some people who fall through the cracks. What you can do could do a better job, and I think that will be part of the investigation. Will be to try to do a better job, at least, of trying to identify people who might be dangerous.
All right, let's go next to Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Good morning, Greg.
How's it going? Yeah, it's got all kinds of different things to say. Let me just focus on one thing. I guess the New York, the guy that went in there and started stabbing people in the mall.
In Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
There's another example of people going to where there's a no free gun zone and citizens not being able to defend themselves. Now, it's kind of strange if you just so happen to be an undercover police officer that had a gun to stop them. To me, it's like maybe it was actual citizen that had a gun that happened to have a concealed carry permit, and that citizen stopped them. But of course, we're going to report it as if it was an undercover police officer, because that wouldn't promote us carrying guns. But all this stuff is all the same thing. It's what can I say? I don't want to sound conspiracy-ish, because that's just a word that you've indoctrinated society to believe that if it's a conspiracy, then nobody has credibility. But you're also doing the same thing with this radicalization. You're defining a word, and you're starting to implant that into the minds of people that if you go to another country and you come back and you allegedly blow something up or shoot something, then you were radicalized.
Well, yeah, I mean, there can be all kinds of reasons, I suppose, but
Right. But you see, I see a pattern how society is being conditioned into the word radicalization. So, if you go to a foreign country and come back, then you allegedly were radicalized if you blow something up or do something. And there's another word called patsies. And those are people that take the fall for things that they don't do. I don't believe that those two kids in New York that allegedly blew the Boston bombing thing up, they were actually patsies that took the blame for it.
You don't think they really were involved?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, come on. Yeah, they were obviously involved. But, okay, the one part of that, I mean, come on, Greg. You've seen the surveillance video. You've seen the shootout that had to take the guy down. Now, don't discredit everything you say by saying you don't think those brothers were involved in the bombing, because there is absolutely zero disputing it. So be careful so that we don't hear you say that, so we throw everything else out you say. Because some of the points he made was legit anyway, and I do agree with him on the fact that sometimes these bombers, I wish I could get into their head and really understand what they're really thinking, because I think a lot of them are not exactly like Osama bin Laden. They are patsies that are somehow misguided. They're unhappy somehow in their own lives and figure this is one way for them to maybe get some attention. I really wonder how much they truly understand about whatever cause ISIS is promoting, or that they just want to be part of something.
Well, I think you're getting at something that is quite, I think, important, namely that people do search for causes and meaning beyond themselves, and especially someone who might be alienated by other things in a particular culture or society might be searching for some cause to give meaning. And in a way, the Islamic terrorist or the ISIS narrative or even the Al-Qaeda narrative can give meaning to an alienated person who might already be in that faith.
That's what I think. They're primed to be, because I can say unequivocally in my life, under no circumstance could I ever be indoctrinated into that line of thinking. In general, one reason, aside from the fact that I like to think I'm a good person, is that I was never really dissatisfied or felt I was mistreated in my life.
Right.
And there certainly are people that are in society, but they find ways to deal with it and live and get better. But man, if you're someone in this country and you didn't get the job, and your wife left you, and you just want to blame everyone, well, hey, I'll join ISIS.
Well, and that certainly seems to be the case in France, for example, with some of the profile of the bombers there. But yes, I think alienation with a society, the absence of economic opportunity, maybe personal unhappiness, all of that contributes to radicalization, or can contribute to sort of embracing a radical cause.
Right. And then sometimes you hear, and a lot of times there are other, maybe more, if you try to put yourself in their shoes, rational lines of thinking for some of these folks who don't like what they think is American imperialism, or the impressing on their culture of an American way of life. And while I don't think the violent reaction is a appropriate. I understand how some countries may say, look, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit different, and I can understand where they're coming from, though, again, I don't agree with their tactics, as opposed to just someone who's unhappy with their life, and so they want to become the American Taliban and join and strike back at a country where they feel they've been mistreated.
Well, and here you get a sort of combination of that. He may have had unhappiness here, but then he goes to the other country, and then he's also informed or given a sort of sense with people in Pakistan or Afghanistan of alienation toward the United States and toward how it's affecting
And I wonder,
this
and
country.
again, I have no knowledge of this, but I mean, have you ever been to Afghanistan or Pakistan?
have not,
I
no.
have not either, but I would imagine it's not a garden spot, okay? And if you live in this country and then visit Afghanistan, I just can't imagine in terms of quality of life there is any comparison.
Well, and it also, you know, I mean, American soldiers have been fighting in Afghanistan for 15 years.
I've talked to plenty of them who they can't get out of there fast enough.
It's a very tough situation, and so certainly the sense that it's a country that's been in some sense oppressed or alienated as well from the international community is certainly there.
Looking for someone to blame. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, more of your phone calls right after this. Stay with us.